very happy to welcome in our next panel, which is on bringing immersive learning to underserved communities. And this will be led by Mr. Clayton Banks, along with Dr. Angelina Dayton and Dr. Shannon Putman. It is wonderful to see you all. Thank you for being here today. I will turn things over now to Mr. Banks, Clayton, and let you lead the panel. And I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say.
Thank you very much, Karen. What a great pleasure to be here with all of us who are looking to do the right thing, right? Not only through technology, but just from a humanity perspective. We've got two unbelievable experts. And I'm so happy to be the moderator because these two are full of nuggets that you guys need to hear. And please look up their LinkedIn, look up, you can put their names on any kind of browser and it'll come up with a million things. These people have been at the forefront of educational and more importantly, how that can become much more equitable across our country. So I'm going to start with having Dr. Dayton to literally give us one of her beautiful nuggets that she shared with me recently on this topic. So, Dr. Dayton, why don't you give me one of those nuggets you had that I thought was so profound? And, not only for the fact that everybody ought to hear this, but there's real meat behind it. So go ahead and we're going to reflect on that.
Well, first, thank you for having me here today. I'm very honored to be on this panel with Dr. Putman because I've been one of her largest fans, her biggest fan, and I can't wait to hear from her also. We spoke previously about the digital divide, and I think the most important thing that we need to recognize is that any inequality that exists in the physical world will be replicated and magnified in the metaverse. And so we need to start discussing those inequalities and giving voice to it so that we can make sure that every voice is heard in the metaverse, because all of us have an irreplaceable contribution to both the physical world and the metaverse, and we need to make sure those contributions are heard and that we respond to them.
What I get out of that, and I want to get out of that, I'll just basically say it couldn't be more appropriate to bring this point to everyone, right? If we got problems right now, just as people, much better, even if you go virtual, right? Putting up a metaverse will replicate whatever we're doing now. So I have to start to make sure it replicates what we want to be doing today. And so I think that's such a great point when you're looking at physical and digital and how both can create a problem. So move on because we are trying to we get as many we can today. But Dr. Shannon, let me just say, you talk about something from another perspective in addition. You and I were bonding around teachers. Why don't you share with everybody, what you and I and Dr. Dayton talked about around teaching and teachers?
Yes, thank you very much. And I also want to return the love to Dr. Dayton. She is amazing, and I'm a massive fan of her as well. My dissertation project focused on pre-service teachers. And I think if we're going to actually make a change and reach the students that we want to reach and that we need to reach, it has to start somewhere. And one of the first places we can go to is our teachers. So we have to change the curriculum that we're teaching them, and we have to change how we're teaching them. We have to prepare them to be able to teach in a digital world so that they can prepare their students. Because what we found out with COVID is that we're not preparing our students. A lot of schools have one-to-one Chromebooks, but kids didn't even know how to log into a Google Classroom. And then you're also having, especially when we're talking about underserved populations, we're having generational divides where their parents couldn't help them because they didn't know, they didn't have anybody who could assist them because they didn't have the skills either. So we need to get to the teachers and we need to get to the families and make sure that they can even have that access to the metaverse so that they can get there and experience it like everybody else. trying to keep it brief, or I could continue, but I know we got a couple other points.
I would love to add to that if I can. Because I think Shannon and I think exactly alike. I often say that emerging technologies have finally caught up with the creativity and genius of our youth. And teachers are right now the center point of the classroom. But what we find is that our young people are finding ways to educate themselves. And sometimes they're the person that we can lean on in the classroom. We talk about things like flipped classrooms. We talk about things like, novel ways of learning. And I think teachers are very much an important part of this, but really empowering the students too, to understand that they're no longer consuming content. They're actually the creators of the worlds that they live in, both the virtual worlds and the physical worlds. And so I think Shannon and our points completely meshed together, that there has to be both re-educating teachers and, giving the power to the student to start to take the focus of where they're going to be going and what they're going to be learning and what they're going to be creating. And so I love when Shannon says there's tough conversations to be had about classroom learning, because these are conversations our schools are not ready to have. They are tough to have because they're challenging really the paradigms that we've normally existed in. And I think those conversations are the conversations that need to be had in order for us to address inequality, because not everybody has the same access, not everybody has the same teacher education in the background, and not every student knows the possibilities in their future. And so I just want to second what Shannon said. It's a great point.
Talk about affordability in this area. If you guys don't mind, try to talk about the affordability, the cash. All right. Dr. Shannon Putman, would you start that?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, that's going to be one of your major concerns, especially when we're talking about technology. And I think that we need to utilize some of the resources that we have out there. There is a lot of federal funding, but what that needs to happen from that is we need to have support from people that are higher up. We need to have the support of the superintendents. They need to be willing to see the potential and invest in it. It gets tiring always trying to make believers out of non-believers about virtual reality and the 3D world, not necessarily just even in the headset. And so having to continuously get them to buy in, I think is a major hurdle. So once we can get them like either in that headset and get them seeing it, then we can start to see the money flow. But what people aren't understanding is that this isn't something that's going away. We saw a $3.9 billion investment in 2020 alone by industry and education. We're seeing major companies like UPS, like Walmart, they're already using it. They're already integrating it into their companies. So not only do students need to have access to it, we need to dedicate the money to it, but now it also will return in dividends, because we can open up so many different career paths for students that might have never thought about, this at all. We're going to need programmers. We're going to need, digital artists, all those kind of things. And some students would have never been exposed to that. So yes, the prices are coming down, which is great. We're seeing some different options, but we need to have those high stakeholders and get their belief in it so that we can get the funding to go, especially to those schools that desperately need it. Because we all know the schools and the districts that have everything they need, and we know the ones that don't. And in order for that not to continue, that's where, people like us, we need to continue to do the work to make sure that people understand that this isn't going away. This is a technology, and it's not a replacement. I think people fear what they don't understand. Everybody has this dystopian future, like, oh, we're all going to be in our basements and in our headsets and nobody leaves their house. Like, that's absolutely not what this is. It's not a replacement for a teacher. It's not a replacement for education. It's an enhancement. And I think that needs to be the message.
And Shannon, before I make any comments, can you talk a little bit more about the projects that are happening Kentucky-wide?
Yeah, so Kentucky, sure, thanks. Well, Kentucky has really been putting in work. We've really been putting in We've been putting in a lot of work here in Kentucky to really make it, a VR kind of. hub. Our motto kind of is "Why not Kentucky?" And so our school district, JCPS, is the 28th largest in the country, has already been invested in working with VR for 2 years. The University of Louisville has been supporting teachers and VR use all over. We just conducted a 3-day boot camp for teachers focused solely on using virtual reality in their classroom. And then we're currently developing a project with the Kentucky Department of Education. And if things go as we're planning, we'll see over 5,400 headsets across the state of Kentucky and connecting the most urban and rural districts across the entire Commonwealth via virtual reality. So we're really thrilled about what we're doing, and we're hoping to be a model for what other districts can do. So thank you for that, Karen. Or Angela.
Yeah, I was going to say those things are happening largely because of the efforts of Shannon and her guidance. And I like how you consider what I call fiber to first paycheck, which is the issues that happen from connectivity all the way to having a qualified workforce, which I know is one of your end goals in Kentucky. How do you bring into existence a 21st century workforce, the jobs that will become available that don't even exist yet? Because we understand that extended reality is already here. It's not something we can choose to do or not do. And I like how you mentioned that some people are think that it may replace what they already have. But what normally happens is that the telephone doesn't go away, when we have smartphones, and television doesn't go away when we're able to stream things on our computers. Older mediums include and transcend the medium prior. The next medium includes and transcends the medium prior. And so I tell people it's important to read, but reading isn't the primary medium anymore. We read in service of watching our videos. We read in service of scrolling through Facebook. And so I think the new medium isn't going to replace anything. It's just going to enhance what we already have. And I think making that clear makes people a little bit less afraid of what's coming next. And I think trailblazers like you have a courage to say, if it's inevitable, let's just jump in and see what's going to happen. And and make it happen, because it's going to happen.
Let me jump in here just a little bit. So one of the things that I think we have to consider, right? So this is a nice, I don't know, romance that's happening in front of all of it. The reality along with that, I am so jealous. You don't know that. But one of the things that we hear in a lot of the housing, poor neighborhoods, to your point, Dr. Dayton, that a lot of them aren't necessarily thinking about a lot of the future skills and all those type of things. I think skills are going to become much more prominent than jobs necessarily. And the question becomes, how do we set you up for, future ready things? More importantly, Dr. Putman, is it schools' only responsibility? Is it the household? Is it neighborhood? Is it the government? It's a big ecosystem that gets one person in the right track, if you will, whatever that track is. What we're seeing in a lot of these very vulnerable neighborhoods, they don't have the money to have all this, have the money to have or exposure. In some cases, don't even get the access and exposure. People that are serving them don't even know. So how do we start to, because it actually will help the whole country, right? It would be help if everyone is getting this similar access, may not at the same level, but how do we get there? Dr. Putman, why don't you give your comments on that, and then I'd love to hear from Dayton.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things is we just need to start to do it, and we need to demand it. We need to have a tribe. And what we did here with the partnership with the University of Louisville and Jefferson County Public Schools, when we opened up our first 2 VR labs in elementary schools, we picked schools that are in potentially in the classic underserved neighborhood. So they're Title I schools, 98% free and reduced lunch, 87% minority, because we knew that those are the students that need it. They were the ones that are the most vulnerable, and we wanted to start with them. And so we just have to actually buck up and do it, and come together and unite. So as teachers, as administrators, as community centers, as families, we need to start demanding these things and be like, we are entitled to these things, and this is what we want, and this is what we're going to get. We need to do. We need to start having teachers that are supported so that they do go to those schools, because we all know the schools that people are like, oh, I would never go to that school. And we need to change that conversation and be like, I want to go to that school. And we need to bring in everybody that we can. We need to have more teachers of color. And we need to be more open to learning and listening and understanding what our role is and how we can be advocates and supportive. And I forgot which one of the, because there's always the buzzwords, but that, we are an ally and we are active in that, in that partnership, and learn and understanding that we don't know it all. So we need to be open to learn. I always thought that I was, doing all I could for my students of color. And I realized I hadn't even touched the surface. Especially being a special ed teacher, equity and equality is very important to me, and especially with technology and everything. And so I always thought I was an advocate. And then I realized things that I thought were helping weren't. It wasn't because I was doing it because, it wasn't malicious, but I had to step back and be like, okay, this isn't about me, and make sure that I learned what it was that I could do to help. And I think until we can have those type of conversations and that type of unity, that's where we can go with, and that's where our strength comes from.
And I'd love to add to that. I think the best way to communicate sometimes is through stories. And I often tell people, what if you knew the internet was coming 5 years before it finally became ubiquitous? What choices would you have made? And if we give you the information now about what we know is coming, how would you invest differently? What would you do with the knowledge, and how would you make a greater difference in the communities that you're working in? And the second thing I would say that comes from what Shannon was just saying about how we become allies, I do not accept that poorer communities don't have the solutions. I think that most of the creative solutions come from those of us that are struggling with the few resources that we have. Getting the buy-in's hard, but I know that quite often I'll go to a school where they have a firewall, and there are kids that only have a smartphone. They don't even have a computer in their house, but they figured out a way to get through the firewall and post that TikTok of what they did in the bathroom with their girlfriends, in the little dance in the mirror. And they are, I said it already, but I'll say it again, that emerging technologies has finally caught up with the creativity and genius of youth. Sometimes we just need to step aside and listen to the solutions that they're offering. They see the world in a way that we don't, and we need to follow their lead. And so we're doing a half an hour panel. A lot of my kids say, I'm not going to watch your panel because it's longer than a TikTok, right? If you can't get your message out in 45 seconds, I'm not interested in hearing it. And so I think that we do need to find the resources to help these communities, but they have the solutions. They have them. They know what they want. They will listen, and they will. I had somebody once say, the immigrant community we won't be able to find the solutions to WhatsApp and misinformation in the immigrant community. I go, oh my gosh, the immigrant community is where you're going to find the solution. We're not going to be able to. We need to help these people. I go, you need to pass the mic. That's what you need to do. Pass the mic. The solutions are there.
Pass the mic.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention, and
yeah, necessity is the
let
mother
me
of
jump
invention.
in and just say go ahead, Shannon.
No, I was just saying necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, you have to be creative, and you have to be innovative when you don't have things that other people have.
Yeah. And
you have no choice.
The creativity and genius of youth is really
so true.
where things are. So did we want to take questions from the audience? Is that what happens now? Or
well, it's unfortunate.
Do you have more questions for us?
Voice MO is not doing what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like chat. We'd like for them to change.
So I just would like to say that I put in this
I don't know if anything
quotation.
I'm saying is being heard.
I'm here. Yes. And sorry that you're having problems with this with the connection. But I put in the quotation from Dr. Dayton. Emerging technologies have finally caught up with the creativity and genius of youth.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to correct that. And wow, I'm feeling the fire and the passion come from you all as you're having this conversation. It's really inspiring, and I admire the work that you do. And I'm not seeing any questions here in the channel. But what about questions you have for each other?
I do have Mr. Banks asked about cost, about how do we, and one of the things I've done is I've traveled around with my little bag of headsets, is I found that 5 headsets for an entire school is all you need. Now your Best Buy salesman is going to try and sell you more, and I think the 4,500 is great because I think that more is better, but I think that there's a limit. We limit ourselves when we think if we don't have 30 headsets that we can't do VR in a classroom. There are creative ways to make sure that you get what you need. And one of the things I want to point out is and what Shannon said is volumetric, 3D, if it's 3D printing, if it's Web3, or if it's VR, or if it's AR, all these things are in our future. And so it doesn't have to just be headsets in order for us to educate our youth and train our youth for the jobs of the future. And so one of the things I like to point out is if you watch YouTube, a lot of kids watch other people game. So if you have 5 headsets and one of them streaming, the other 25 kids in your classroom are learning. They're learning by watching. And so those creative solutions to places and issues, to poverty in the classroom, can help us still bring these technologies into the classroom without having to worry like we don't have enough, or looking from a deficit model instead of from an abundance model. So
I think
I just wanted to address, yeah.
No, to that beautiful point, I think that was the biggest struggle too for me when working with teachers, is getting teachers out of that in Google Cardboard mindset. Now, don't get me wrong, Google Expeditions was fantastic, but every teacher I would go to, they were like, I can have every student on at the same time and I can see where they're looking. And I'm like, yeah, they're at Mount Rushmore. Like, you don't think they're going to turn and look at Mount Rushmore? You need an iPad to tell you that? Like, they don't all have to be on at the same time, and especially with solutions like clean boxes, with, light technology, with COVID and sanitation procedures, and having that in place, we can still do it safely with only having one headset and sharing headsets, and I always tell teachers, I'm like, look, this is how kids learn. And so my biggest motto in teaching is, I've always said, I don't change the way my students learn, I change the way I teach. And if we're not willing to do that, then why are we even here? So absolutely. I always told them I would invest in one, and it was either an HTC or, Oculus at the time, versus 25 Google Expeditions and I'm not knocking any companies, but Google isn't even supporting them anymore. So that's okay. Like, I don't get paid by any company or anything, but getting away from that mindset.
That's a great point though, Shannon, right? Everybody's like, well, is this going to last? Is my device going to last for the next 15 years? I'm like, you change your phone every 2 years. What are you talking about?
Yes.
You take your phone into the bathroom with you. Technology is not sacred anymore. These things are going to become obsolete before you even have a chance to use it. You're locking them away. Let them break it. Why? Why would I let them break it? Because then you can look inside and see what it's made out of. What a great opportunity. Right. And there's a lot of great things in the chat right now about creative ways to use the technology you do have to get started. And there was a question about access to the internet. And I think that's a great, I always say fiber to first paycheck, right? If we don't have the connectivity, there's 1,000 different ways that you can get stopped. And I think access to the internet is a very important thing that we need to address. But there are ways to get that. And I don't know, Shannon, did you want to say what you do for your because you have a lot of headsets? Like, how do you solve that problem?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of headsets, but that's across the entire state. So that might only be 20 for an entire school, So, but we started, with only 1 or 2 headsets. I actually started before the standalone came. I had one wired headset, and I would, do different things. And even if it was something as simple as, as class view or as math, class math after class math. And what I would do is I would have students like an old school relay race, and they would be on one side of the classroom in a line, and they would have to run across the classroom, this was pre-COVID, put the headset on, solve a math problem, and put it off. And so then that would cause the headset to go to sleep, and then they'd have to run back across the classroom, tag their friend, and then the next person would go. And so since the headset went to sleep, the next person had to put it on and unlock it. So they were learning the skills of the headset during the relay race and learning math and being active and getting out of their chair, because research shows us that sitting for anyone under the age of 21 is actually painful because their tailbone is still growing, and it was competition. So we were teaching them how to lose, because a lot of the younger generation, anytime they lose, it's, oh, he cheated. No, you just lost. So we're teaching them sportsmanship and emotional control, all from one headset. And so you can do it. You just have to think.
Take notes. Karen,
and the other thing, what I can't stand too is it was especially teachers when they're like, well, is there an app for that? There doesn't need to be an app for that. We have what we need. We always want to continue to create, of course, but we need to change how we think. Instead of thinking, is there an app for that? It's, hey, there's this app. How can I use it in my classroom?
Did everybody hear that? Did everybody hear that? That's very important. Every app is I always say every app is a learning app. And it seems like, Karen, it would be really great to just get together with a bunch of teachers like Shannon to lead something. I'm volunteering you, Shannon. All the creative ways that we've been able to solve issues of things like connectivity and only having one headset and, only having enough money for like 2 apps. I know there are people that have enough money to go out there and outfit their whole school. But I think Mr. Banks made the point, like, what do you do for those that can't? And there are solutions, and affordability. Pretty soon everybody's going to be able to afford things. Pretty soon we're going to get connectivity. But when we don't, we need to do what we can with what we have. I see you looking at the time, Karen. We're trying to get everything in.
Yes. No, this is fantastic. I love it. And I love the idea of carrying this on. And that has, in many of the other sessions here, there's been sort of that kind of energy and impetus toward continuing this. I think that, these sessions feel short and that like not everything is getting said that could be or that needs to be. And so I love that. And I do want to speak very, very briefly up to that question of the internet access. And, we need to face the fact that access to the internet is a basic utility that everyone should have, right? Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, and so I see Julie is here. Thank you so much, Angelina, Dr. Dayton, and Shannon.
Thank you so much.
Really loved this session. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Banks. We're so sorry that you had to drop out if you are listening.